And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. What is it? Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening, everybody. And I see a lot of 5x5s out in the chat, which is great. So you can all hear me, hopefully. And this is Lon Seidman, your host this evening for what we are optimistically hoping will be the launch of Starlink 6-13 on a Falcon 9 rocket from the Pad 41 over at Cape Canaveral. I've got some great friends joining me this evening, including our expert, Sawyer Rosenstein. How you doing, Sawyer?
I'm doing great. We have a fantastic view here of Pad 40. We have the go that they're going to start fueling her up after all these delays. But it may seem like another Starlink, but every one of them is beautiful in my books.
Absolutely. It never gets old. And we've got thousands of people watching in the chat who also agree. So we're going to look for a great show this evening. And in the field, delivering this beautiful image to us is Max Evans. How you doing, Max?
Good evening, everybody. It's a relief to hear that they are go for prop load because we have been out here all evening since about 6 o'clock getting ready for the stream for everybody. So it's a relief that they are at least going to try and get her off the ground tonight.
And Sawyer, this has been a very iffy weather night, but SpaceX keeps pushing away here. There's a pretty long window. I'm guessing they want to get these rockets off the ground to keep the schedule going, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you always want to be launching, right? You always want to try and get off the air. It's the same thing with airlines. If your airplane's on the ground, you're not making money. If your rocket's on the ground, you're not making money either. So, yeah, they always want to launch, but it's always scrubs over ruds. So you'd rather err on the side of caution. So thankfully, though, weather seems to be 80% go for this. So that's why they have these long windows in hopes that if something goes wrong, either with the rocket or weather, they can find a spot where everything works out just right.
I think when we started, or at least started keeping vigil over this watch, it was about a 20% go? So that's a pretty big improvement in the weather.
Yep, especially because they originally thought that it would only improve to about 35% go by the end of the window. And right now, again, as mentioned, at 80.
Excellent. And Max, how's the weather out where you are at the on the field there?
It's been very spotty throughout the entire evening, but thankfully it looks like the radar is starting to clear up. The clouds are starting to thin out, and I'm feeling a little bit of raindrops here and there, but they're minor. It's weather in Florida here; it comes and goes as it pleases. But I think overall, I think we just got word that weather is now 80% or 90% favorable for tonight's launch. So overall, things are improving.
Excellent. And you know what? I've got a super chat that I want to acknowledge right out of the gate here from Musical Wolves, because he is chipping in for the Camera Bug Zapper Fund. And having spent some time both with you and Sawyer out there, the bugs were brutal. I'm still recovering from getting eaten alive. How are the bugs looking out?
Let me tell you, that would be like the most valuable asset in all of any piece of equipment that we have. That would certainly be the most valuable, especially at this time of year, both here in Florida and in Boca, I'm sure.
I think we'll have to invest in that because they are absolutely brutal out there. And you know what?
Yes.
Sawyer was my bug spray supplier, so it would have been worse had Sawyer not brought that can of Sawyer bug spray with him.
Yes,
and it really is
literally
called
the
Sawyer.
supplier. The brand name was Sawyer for the bug spray. So there was Sawyer on Sawyer at the launch.
That's right. It was one heck of a time. We were talking about the Crew 7 launch that we were all gathered in person for. So that was a lot of fun meeting all of you folks in person. So what's the trajectory tonight? These Starlinks kind of follow the same path every time, right, Sawyer?
Yeah, they do, because they're all kind of going into the same area. So these are going to the southeast. So best view, if it's clear, because I know a lot of Florida has cloudy areas still. Southeasterly area would be the best place to view it. That will land on the drone ship downrange, which is currently about 618 kilometers downrange. The fairings will also land about 670 kilometers downrange. Again, all of this to the southeast. And I should mention, by the way, that the drone ship is a shortfall of gravitas today.
And that drone ship also has to have good conditions for the rocket to land, right? So it's not just the weather at the launch pad, it's also how the weather is over the Atlantic Ocean where the drone ship is, right?
Exactly. And that's part of the 45th Weather Squadron, part of Space Launch Delta 45 with the U.S. Space Force. They're in charge of the range, which includes the weather, and they put out launch minus forecasts. And a lot of times they will, for SpaceX missions, include things such as booster recovery weather. So they'll even check the weather on how the drone ship is. And again, we had the hurricane that recently came through Idalia, which first off, I do want to send our thoughts to everyone that was affected along the Big Bend, Georgia, and along that area. But also, thankfully that went into the Atlantic Ocean towards the northeast, and this is going southeast, so it shouldn't be an issue for the booster landing.
And that would answer the question that Musical Wolves left as a super chat here, who says it's hard to believe they're launching so soon after a hurricane, but it's pretty much cleared out at this point, right? So it's really not going to impact tonight's launch if the weather is 80%.
Right, and the other thing is that SpaceX tends to roll out their rockets pretty last minute because
Right.
they're very good with their quick turnarounds. So you can keep the rocket inside the HIF, the Horizontal Integration Facility, and then the storm goes through, no major damage of any kind, then you roll the rocket out and go for launch tonight.
And speaking of them rolling things out quickly, I think, Max, you observed some fairing halves getting delivered back to that facility this evening, didn't you, Max?
So actually, it wasn't the fairing halves. It was a pair of fairings completely sealed together. We presume for the Starlink 6-12 mission for September 2nd or 3rd, I believe. Yeah, that came by during just after I think the first or second T0 slipped this evening, and it rolled right by the VAB and onto 39A. And actually, right now, I'm sure we can pull it up on Space Coast Live via one of our views. But the transporter erector today is going up.
Just lost you
noticed
there.
that.
I
Transporter
think you
records
mentioned that the transporter erector is going up at 39A.
Oh, wow.
Shoot! I'm sorry. Did you guys lose me?
Yeah,
for
just at
quick
the
seconds
end.
there, yeah.
Yes. Okay, but yes. Yeah. The transporter erector is going up at Pad A right now. Fun fact.
All right. So there's
There you go.
constant work. There's always something going on over at SpaceX HQ there at KSC and at Cape Canaveral. LER actually asked a related question here from the chat, which is how are Starlink missions numbered? Because obviously this is a 6-13. The last one I believe was 6-12, if I'm not mistaken. So how do
No,
they
it's
number
actually
these?
6-11.
Oh, 11. So we're still waiting on 12 to go up. So these are
Yeah,
just
they're
groups of
going
satellites?
11, 13, 12.
That's confusing.
It
I mean,
can be.
after all the Group 5 missions, this is pretty tame. Like, to be honest.
True. So basically, as you mentioned, there was Group 5, now there's Group 6. A lot of that has to do with what shell it's going into. So there's a bunch of different shells or specific orbital planes, like little mini highways that they all follow. And so they're in different parts of the globe and different inclinations and different heights so that you get more broad coverage. So the most of the time, the Group 6 ones of these Starlink V2 minis are going to be going into the same orbit and the same inclination, so they get the same number, which is a 530 kilometer circular orbit inclined 43 degrees. Now, as for the numbering, a lot of this goes back to the space shuttle days. If you think about it, there were all the time where it would be, STS 121, 122, 117. It's like, why does it go out of order? Well, the mission numbers get their designation first. And then once it's designated a number, they're not going to say, oh, we'll flip the numbers around and change this one to 12 since it's going first. Once it's assigned 13, it's 13. So
13.
you could push this a year down the line, it would still be 6-13.
And we're looking at about just under 30 minutes to launch now. I'm starting to see some venting. I'm sure, Max, you can see some venting, obviously through your camera, but also with your eyes there. So where are we at in the countdown right now?
Well, we are still in the midst of first stage propellant load. We actually are not too far away now from the T-minus 20-minute event, but we still have quite a bit ways to go. But as you can see from this view, there's a little bit of frost now building on the first stage of Falcon 9.
We'll be seeing a lot more of that frost as time goes on. We've got this very helpful countdown timeline, and what we're looking for is at the T-minus 20-minute mark where we get the best vent. And I tell you what, that was awesome seeing that in person with all that venting right in front of me there. So that was pretty cool. Hey, we got a bunch of super chats coming in. So I do want to acknowledge some folks here. We have, first of all, 2 store messages from Andrea. So saying not only do y'all bring good coverage, you also made me love bacon. I love bacon too. So thank you very much for your support of the effort here. Dawn Sloat is a new Pad Rat member. Bidford gifted 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for your gift, and hopefully those of you who got one will thank Bidford for that. Ryan with a $4.99 super chat says, "Howdy, here's for another beautiful launch." We have Space Wolf with $2.99 for some pun tokens for you, Sawyer. So there you go. You got your pun tokens for this evening.
I will
And
take
then
it.
he'll take it. And we also have another, let's see, 5 gifted memberships from Moldy Space Industries. And when it gets a little too damp out there, you get some moldy space, I guess. So thank you very much for your Red Team membership contributions there. And then we've got a bunch of new Pad Rat members here. We have Chuck Space, Dana Thompson, Roland Hines, and once my thing clicks through here, and the RC Horseman. So thank you all for your support of our efforts this evening. And everyone's working so hard on this. It was so great to meet you all out in person, just to see this work done in person. And I know poor Max has been out there getting eaten alive by the bugs since what time, Max?
Oh boy, I've been here since about 6 o'clock this evening.
So, and you're over at the NASA press site, it looks like.
Yes, sir. So for any Slick 40 mission that we are present at over at the press site, in order to get a view of the pad, we have to go all the way down the lawn and over as far south as we can, because pad 40 is hidden behind a lot of trees. So it's quite a hike to get back to the parking lot. So we are about as far into the press lawn as you can go.
Back in my day, the trees were so high you couldn't even see 40.
Oh boy.
They have cut them
It's
down
truth, though.
considerably. I remember that.
Yes.
I was there a number of years ago when it was like that. You know, I was there once when they had like a brush fire going on, and they were putting out the fire while we're all waiting for a rocket to launch. It was quite a scene that was going on out there. I got a question from the Ethereal Swordsman, and I don't know, maybe Max can handle this one because you're looking at it. He wants to know what's with the crane next to the rocket.
So excitingly, that's a very good question. So the crane you are seeing to the left of Falcon 9 right now is what is going to be used to hopefully soon start putting all the crew access tower segments in place over at 40. Currently, they have, I think, 4 or 5 different segments holding over at the Robert Grote facility. And once those are all as complete as they can be in their segments, they will eventually be rolled down through the Kennedy Space Center and then over to Slick 40, where they will all begin stacking the segments and then construct the crew access tower.
Wow! So when this is done, you will be able to get on a rocket at 40, at 39 A and B, and I believe at the which is the one that ULA uses?
41.
41. So you've got 4 ways off the planet. In one spot. So that's
basically all in one view, which is pretty crazy. I mean, from where we are in the press lawn, I'm looking at Pad B with the mobile launcher on it it's flooded with lights right now. Pad A with the TE just going up. 41's kind of dark because nothing's happening there tonight. And then of course we have 40 all the way to the right. So it's a very, very, very active spaceport.
Yeah, two things I do want to point out there. One, you can see these segments and some of the crane pieces actually being delivered over to Pad 40 on the recent KSC flyover. If you haven't watched that yet, you can get a really good view of where it is. And secondly, the over at 39B, it's just the mobile launcher, not the crawler transporter. That rolled out away from it, and there may be something with that.
Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Stay tuned, everybody. You'll hopefully find out about that. Hey, we got another gifter of Red Team memberships, Ken Schaefer, with 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for your contribution this evening. We greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure the recipients of those Red Team memberships do as well. Hey, Sawyer, what do you get for those Red Team memberships?
I mean, you get access to amazing photos and videos there on YouTube, members-only content. We recently, for all of the Starship testing, if for Red Team and above, you've been able to get a multi-view with 9 different feeds, all in 4K. You get behind-the-scenes pictures, occasionally behind-the-scenes videos. So, yeah, it's I even subscribe to it. I pay for it myself. It's that awesome.
It is awesome, and I see the booster is getting continually fueled here. That frost is going up the side there. We should talk about the booster. This one's seen some stuff, hasn't it?
Oh, it's seen some things, man. Yes, this is. I should probably even mention. This is the 7th flight for our booster friend over here, B1077. So 77 on flight number 7, which has previously supported Crew 5, GPS 3, SV06, Inmarsat I6F2, CRS-28, Intelsat G37, and a previous Starlink.
So it's pretty much a middle-aged booster like me.
Yeah, and it really likes missions with a lot of random letters and numbers apparently in it, with SV06, I6F2, G37, hike.
That's right. And, the other thing I was thinking about, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and we're about 3 minutes away from the big vent, by the way, everybody. These launch pads for SpaceX in particular get used a lot. And these pads were not built by SpaceX. They were certainly refurbished and renovated and constructed additional stuff with from SpaceX. But these pads were not designed really to have a rocket taking off like several times a month here, right? What happens to these pads every time one of these rockets goes up?
Well, as much as we like to joke about what happened after the first integrated flight test of Starship and all the flying concrete and the whole debate of what about flame trenches or not, you're still going to get pad damage. As you mentioned, it is you've got a rocket blasting into even that flame trench, which, yes, it has reinforced concrete and things like that, but over time, it's going to wear down. So eventually, as they get breaks in between missions, they will go in there and patch up the flame trench, patch up anything that gets damaged on the pad, make little tweaks here and there to the transporter erector or anything that might have some scorching or damage. They have teams that do just that. So, yeah, it's basically expect the damage and then clean her up and get her ready to go again.
It's just amazing. I think there was we saw a Starlink go off of this pad just like 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, the record I think we've seen was around 4 days, 3 or 4 days between launches at the same pad. It's unbelievable the pace they're at.
Incredible, and it just keeps going. It's the Starlink Express. So these things just keep flying away. Yeah. So hey, Kevin. So Max, when you're down at the out at the press site for one of these Starlink launches, I'm guessing there's not a lot of press activity for one of these, right?
Did you just call me Kevin?
I'm sorry. I was looking at Kevin's name,
Juan,
and
you
I just
called me Kevin. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sorry.
It's okay. But yeah,
Sorry about that.
usually for these Starlink missions, there's no official press gathering, I guess one could say. So it is basically just limited down to who over at the Space Center has full-time press access, and we as NSF thankfully do. So we are one of the lucky few to be able to come out and cover these missions.
Very grateful for that access. Yeah, it's amazing just to see this, and so many thousands of people are watching these launches every time they happen. So it's great that we can provide that for folks. And it looks like we're about 30 seconds away here from the big vent, which
Actually,
is a good
a little
sign.
less.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, SpaceX is a little sneaky. We call it the T-minus 20-minute vent, but it's actually the T-minus 20-minute 20-second
Oh,
vent.
here we are.
AKA the best vent. Which, there we go. You can starting to see
There
it
she goes.
There it is.
on the right side of the rocket there.
Like Old Faithful.
Very
just like
reliable.
baseball.
Very reliable. And our clock is accurate too, which is great.
The difference is Old Faithful is really, really hot steam, whereas this is liquid nitrogen that's being used to purge the lines and cool them down and get them prepared for the next step, which will be the loading of liquid oxygen, into that second stage. This vent is also an indication that stage 2 RP1 load is complete. RP1 is the fuel that is used along with the liquid oxygen oxidizer, and it's basically a refined form of kerosene.
And that is also why our boosters here get so seasoned as they come back down, right? It's all of the soot from that RP1 burning.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll know that stage 2 LOX load begins when the venting stops. So this will be about 4 minutes of Puff the Magic Dragon here.
And the fact that we're hitting all these milestones is a good sign that SpaceX is confident that this is going to go tonight.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is once SpaceX fuels this rocket up, they're committing. So if you get down to T-minus 1 minute, let's say, and the onboard computers call, an abort, there's not really that much time to turn it around, because keep in mind, these are super cooled propellants in here. They are kept below their actual point where they become liquids, which is very, very cold. And so to maintain that level and everything, they typically don't do that. So once it's filled, you're either going at that point pretty much, especially with this type of window, or you're not.
It's amazing when you look at how, with SpaceX in particular, how frequently they hit the T0 now, right? Whereas in the past, I remember when they first got going, it was very rare they'd actually get it off on time. But now they've really got this process down to, I guess, kind of a science, right?
It also helps when you have 6 T0s in the window, which we had today.
Right, that's true. And that's why they pushed it back, right? They didn't want to start fueling until they knew they had a good chance of getting it off. And when you think about putting something so cold into something metal, there are issues related to stress on the vehicle, I would imagine, over time too. And that's, I guess, leads to the lifespan of the booster being an issue. Not this one, but
I mean, when you think about it, things expand and contract in the temperatures with the metal. So, yeah, if you're keeping it super, super, super cool, really cold stuff in there, you don't want to keep expanding, contracting. So, yeah, I mean, eventually over time that's a concern. But, yeah, once you've got the super cold stuff in, you kind of just want to keep everything super cold if you're going to launch.
That's right. You still see some venting going on here. And, hey, I've got a super chat question here. From I'd rather be flying an X-Wing, and I would rather be flying an X-Wing too. I'd get around a lot quicker, and you wouldn't need all this fuel. You could just whatever. I don't even know how the X-Wings are powered, but they don't seem to need rocket fuel. He wants to know, would they ever hold off refurbishing the pad to be able to do a back-to-back launch? And I guess they probably do that now, right?
I don't know for certain, but I would imagine so. What they do, though, after every launch is they examine the launch pads, regardless. So they're going to see how much damage there is, and if there is, how bad it is. Because there's pretty much always going to be a little bit of damage. It's just a question of, is it bad enough that, if we launch it again, it's going to be even longer to repair. So I'm sure they have, but they're always going to check the pad after each launch.
I was thinking about, as you were saying that, thinking about what happened to the mobile launcher for SLS after its launch, where the elevators got blown out, and it was quite a scene there afterwards. So sometimes there's a little more damage than others. But I would imagine after all these launches, SpaceX has figured out what they need to harden to be able to keep this launch cadence.
Yeah, it's a tad toasty, and you'll also notice that the venting has stopped, and we have confirmation that stage 2 LOX load is underway. Again, LOX is the liquid oxygen, or LOXygen as I like to call it, that mixes with the propellant, the RP1. You need both for the Merlin 1D engines to get all of their fuel, basically, to keep going up into space.
Excellent. Hey, Max, how's the weather looking down there? Because obviously we're 80%, at least that was the last check, but you're on the ground there. What's it looking like?
Currently looking, I think, good so far. There is a bit of cloud cover sticking around, but it is much thinner than it was. So I think the primary concern, at least for the launch criteria, is improving. It has to be said, though, it is disgustingly humid out today, and there isn't even a breath of wind either. So all the moisture, the air is just stagnant around here. I mean, if you look at the flags above the countdown clock right now, they're still. There isn't a breath of wind anywhere. So it feels like we're in a swamp right now, and that's probably why the bugs are so bad. But overall, for launch, I would say things, as we like to say, are trending in the right direction.
I can see too that venting is staying pretty much in place there. We're not seeing it blow around too much, so it looks like the lower level winds won't be an issue, and hopefully the upper level ones are okay too. Hey,
Yeah,
we
that's
got,
just the condensation on the outside of the rocket there. That's not even a vent. That's just, it's so humid out and that stuff is
gosh.
so cold that it just vents off, and that's why you get that cool smoky effect.
really cool. Only my soda cans could get that cold. It would look really cool to
Yeah.
walk around one
Reminder,
of those.
kids, smoking is bad for you, but this kind of smoke is good for rockets.
Exactly. All right. Hey, we got another a gift of a Red Team membership from Jeff Rowe. Thank you very much for that. And I got some more questions here from the chat. And by the way, chat, if you want to get a question visible in our queue, the best way for us to see it is to @NASA Spaceflight, and that'll put it into another window here where I can get a look at it here. So here's a question from We Will Rocket You. Love the usernames we have in our community here. Does a supermoon or blue moon cause any atmospheric issues with rocket launches?
I mean, you're not going to see that much atmospheric effect with it. I mean, it will obviously be brighter. You have the chance of the lunar jellyfish potentially, especially if it's closer to a full moon like we have. Again, the main thing it affects is the tides, so it's just keeping an eye on the booster or the drone ship. But otherwise, not really much effect other than looking cool. And for some people, if you happen to be in the exact right spot, it will look like the rocket is flying through the full moon, right, Max?
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm not going to say too much more than that. I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. And talk about this lunar jellyfish. Is that so we've had that jellyfish effect, that nebula when we're close to sunset or just after sunset. Is that similar, Sawyer, that it kind of reflects off the moonlight?
Right, yeah, there's a few different kinds of jellyfish. There's the nebula you talked about, which is the plume interacting with the first and second stage. The normal jellyfish that we talk about is when light from either the sun just rising over the horizon or just setting over the horizon hits the plume just right that it illuminates it. This is basically the same as that, except instead of the sun over the horizon, it's the light of the moon illuminating the engine glow underneath. And especially once it gets that high up with the second stage, it expands out so much further. So it kind of looks like the top of a jellyfish, hence the name.
And you got, by the way, a great photo, which I think is available through one of our channels here, of the nebula from the other night for Crew 7. That was an amazing picture.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe it's being tested for quality before becoming a print, because again, it was very dark, and to get that shot, if anyone knows cameras, you have to have a very high ISO and a very slow shutter speed, which I learned from Max.
Absolutely. And by the way, Max is going to we're going to let him send them off here in a minute or two to observe this launch. So Max, whenever you need to take off, go ahead and get your whatever equipment you need ready there, and we'll catch up with you after the launch.
I think it would help actually if I took off now, as much as I hate to say it, and leave you guys hanging. But hopefully, if things work out, we should have a very, very, very cool shot coming everyone's way. So I will see you gentlemen on the other side.
Excellent. Go at it.
Good luck,
We'll
sir.
look forward to seeing that. Excellent. Hey, this might be a good opportunity to talk about the prints. You mentioned prints. We have those metallic prints at NASA Spaceflight store, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have plenty of awesome prints, including one of my favorites is from Max, actually, of the base of the Falcon 9 with the 9 Merlin 1D engines lit during, I believe it was the Euclid launch. Max is amazing with those. There's some other great photos at shop.nasaspaceflight.com.
Definitely check it out, because there's some great stuff there. And we're getting into the holiday season, a great time to get some gifts ready for the loved ones in your life that are space nerds like we are, right? Can never have enough space stuff. And what's amazing is that you can go to a million launches. They all look different, right? They all have some unique thing that happens during the course of the launch, and it never gets old.
Yeah, it really is. There's something about just being surrounded by space stuff, I think, that's really cool. I I'm not joking. I could not make this up if I tried. Literally next to me on my desk is a piece of the door from the personal hygiene closet from Columbia that flew on its first 6 missions. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
the toilet door is a piece of it is right next
Hey,
to me.
that's awesome. I want one of those too. That'd be great. Hey, this is a good question from the chat, actually, on this topic. Alan Kick wants to know, what was your all-time favorite launch to watch? That's got to be a
Ooh.
hard question.
I think it's still pretty easy for me. STS-130. It was the first launch I ever saw. I ended up meeting a astronaut's family member who I'd become friends with, them and said astronaut. And yeah, again, first launch I ever saw. It was a shuttle launch at night. It was stupidly cold. It was like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but it felt even colder because Florida. And it just lit up the sky so beautifully. The sound at night, again, the night to day was just impeccable, and that got me hooked. That got me addicted to launches.
I think those night launches really do give you a sense of the power, because not only do you see that rocket take off, the fact that it lights up everything with the amount of energy that's being released is just crazy. I would say for me, it was probably STS-133, which is the first launch that I saw. So I went to the last 3 shuttle launches, but 133 was my first, and also the only one that had clear skies. The other ones went right into the cloud. You didn't see much of it after that. But I would say a close second was certainly Artemis, because it was just an incredible launch. Certainly very, very late in the or early in the morning, depending on your perspective. But it was just something incredible to see.
And see, my second was Falcon Heavy demo, because it went on that first day somehow. It was just unbelievable that it actually went to see that power finally. And yeah, it was the old Block 4s, but still. So that's my second.
Now we've got a 2 up here. I guess a booster is being lifted, Sawyer?
Yeah, you can kind of see it in the left part of the right box. Earlier they were putting a cap on top of it, the lifting cap. So basically they're going to be taking it off of the drone ship. Crews have been working on it throughout the day to get everything secured. After it came back in, they will lift it up, move it over to the port itself side, before eventually laying it down sideways on top of a transporter. They're trying to get this done tonight so that they can get that drone ship, just read the instructions, out in time for Sunday's scheduled Starlink 6-12 mission, because obviously a shortfall of gravitas will hopefully come back with a booster on top of it.
It's amazing how much stuff is going on all the time here, right? And you think about all the logistics here. We got to get the booster off the boat. We got to get the boat or the drone ship back out to sea to catch the next one. And this one was from the prior Starlink mission. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. But yeah, SpaceX is really getting into the swing of things as they swing the booster onto the land.
Well, that's an expensive pun right there.
Worth it.
Worth it. Absolutely. Well, we've got about 7 minutes left here, and we are looks like we are getting close to the engine chill phase for liftoff. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. And it's not that the engines are just sitting back having an alcoholic beverage. The engines are chilled ahead of the mission, which basically conditions the engines. So it prepares them for let's try that again. They'll be running the super cold propellant through the engines to condition them ahead of the launch and basically get them ready for the giant forces that they're about to experience when they combine and you get that huge heat and flame coming out the back.
And it's pretty amazing when you think about the fact that these engines have been used multiple times for this purpose and have gone through such tremendous force and stress, and they keep coming back for more. So it's credit to the amount of engineering that goes into these. Hey, I've got a question.
For punishment.
Yes, gluttons for punishment. Hey, we got a super chat here from Kenneth Cannon, which we'll take real quick, and then we'll go through the rest of the timeline here. Does Launch Control still simulcast on local ham frequencies like during shuttle launches? I know they were doing that for Artemis, and I guess it's just a matter of whether or not the repeater there is doing that. I don't know if you have any insight into that.
The local ham radio club typically does run through the repeater. I forget, I think it's on 6 meter or 440. I'm not 100% sure. But they typically do the local amateur radio club there is very good about it. And for those who don't know, I am a amateur radio operator, KC2VRX.
I am Kilo Charlie 1 Romeo Golf Sierra at your service here. We should try to catch each other on the air one of these days.
There we go. The person who taught me all about ham radio and stuff gave me a nickname for the last 3 letters. He gave nicknames to everyone. VRX, the voice of radio excellence. So hopefully you all agree.
That's awesome.
As we have confirmation, by the way, that Stage 1 RP1 load is complete. Again, that's the refined form of kerosene that is used as propellant. So the next major milestones that we're going to keep an eye out for will be the strongback retracting. That's that metal piece to the right of the rocket from our current view that will lean back ever so slightly, just a couple of degrees ahead of liftoff, which at T0 it will then throw back much farther away into its final launch position. Following that retract, we should be seeing in about a minute 15 from now confirmation that Stage 1 LOX load, liquid oxygen load, is complete, followed about a minute later by Stage 2 LOX load completion. The big thing is going to be when the get to the T-minus 1 minute mark. That is when Falcon 9 enters startup, basically when the onboard computers take control of the mission and when the flight tanks are pressurized to their full flight pressure. And then the big moment is waiting for that go from the launch director, T-minus 40 or 45 seconds, depending on if they're looking at any last-minute items. Then at T-minus 3 seconds, we should see a green flash at the base of the rocket, which is the T-TEB, the chemical material that is used to help ignite the engines, followed hopefully by a liftoff at T0.
I'll tell you what, it's really hard to see that rocket now with all all that. I wouldn't say. I guess there's some venting going on too, in addition to just the condensation. It looks like.
Yeah, and again, you can see some of that right near the bottom of the fairing there. That's where the strongback is retracting to. And then, as the fuels finish loading up on that second stage, there's another vent that, again, finishes purging the lines, clears them out ahead of liftoff.
This is really down to a very I won't say it's ever routine, but SpaceX certainly does this a lot. So the process, I'm sure, is now very familiar to everyone on the team, and I think they could probably very easily spot any kind of anomaly as they're going through this process, given how often they do it.
They've got it down to a science, but at the same time, it's also the idea of you don't want to be too complacent, and I think the SpaceX team is really good about that, of knowing that, each launch there's still a chance that something can go wrong. It's still rocket science, so they're extra vigilant and extra careful when launching these. And we have confirmation that the liquid oxygen load is complete on the first stage.
All right, we're just under 3 minutes now to liftoff of Starlink 6-13. How many of Starlinks are on this one? They're not doing as many as they used to because I guess they're larger, right?
Right. They actually, to fit within the Falcon 9, I believe there's 22 on this particular mission. It's usually either 21 or 22. They were originally going to be launching the full-size V2 on Starship, but since it's not fully ready yet, they have the V2 minis, which can launch on Falcon 9, and there are 22 of them tonight.
Right, keeping that internet service going for everybody on the ground. This has really helped, I think, SpaceX get into this routine better, right? Because they're launching constantly, and I think Starlink really allowed them to really push the Falcon 9 design to its limits, it looks like.
Exactly. It's a good way also to test. That's why you'll typically see only boosters that have flown 15, 16 times only launching Starlink. It's a good way to test, all right, how hard can we push these? I know Elon wants them flying 50 to 100 missions, so we'll have to see, how many each of them can do. The next goal seems like is 20 for the 2 boosters that are currently at 16.
Wow. We'll see what happens there. Well, I guess we're getting close here. We're about a minute and 30 seconds left. We got some more venting going on there, it looks like. So what's happening now?
Again, there's that final line purge. That's what's been fueling the second stage with its propellant and oxidizer. Final clear out of the lines there. The rest of it is just a lot of condensation with how humid it is around the rest of the rocket, which is fully fueled. And we're about 10 seconds away from onboard computers taking control.
Right. It's a good sign. We're making our way down to the T0 mark. And we weren't sure we were going to get here tonight, but it looks like it's happening. So that's awesome. And what we're going to do once the rocket lifts off is we'll be quiet for a little bit so you can get some rocket ASMR and enjoy
Falcon 9 is in startup.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but yes.
That's okay. No, it's important.
We will not be, it'll sound like we're just being like we're muting the rocket. We're not. It just takes a while for the sound to hit our microphones at the press site.
The speed of sound is very observable or listenable when you're watching a rocket launch. All right, here we go. 25 seconds.
Standing by for the go for launch.
We're at 15 seconds. Haven't heard the go yet, huh?
Apparently not from the mission control audio. No, they're continuing.
All right. Wait for a go.
About 5 seconds.
4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
Go, Internet Satellites V2, go!
Right, some great shots this evening as the rocket is lifting off. I'm guessing that's from Max's camera?
Yes, that is Max tracking that. The one thing, normally clouds are a bad thing, but in that case it was great because you could see the reflection of the exhaust through the clouds, which actually lit the rocket up as we passed through max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
They have to throttle down for that max Q, is that right, Sawyer?
Yeah, that's when the vehicle has the most stress on it, so rather than pushing it to the max, you kind of slow it down a little bit and then throttle back up to full.
What I love about this stage of flight is as the atmosphere gets thinner, the Falcon really starts to look like a Falcon, doesn't it?
It really does. Again, you get to see all 9 of the engines as the atmosphere thins. I love that portion of it too.
Looks like we will be seeing main engine cutoff in about 25 seconds or so.
Yep, that's when we get the 3 events in quick succession. You'll have main engine cutoff, or MECO. That's followed by the separation of the first and second stages, and then SES-1, which is the start of the second stage. And those all happen within about 10 seconds of each other.
We're starting to see some colors up there, too. Look at that.
And a reminder, our cameras are a little bit ahead of SpaceX, so you may see MECO happen on the left side before the right side.
We are moving at the speed of light.
There we go. It seems like we have MECO, main engine cutoff. Next, we will stand by for stage separation. There we go. And watch on the right side for the Merlin vacuum engine. And there we go. And there goes the stiffener ring. For those who don't know, the stiffener ring is what holds the shape of the vacuum nozzle until it gets into the upper parts of the atmosphere and space.
And we have some disappointed viewers that there's no Stubby again tonight.
Well, sorry to all of them, but we should be getting fairing deployment momentarily as well.
And those fairings will be recovered.
Yes, many of them are flown multiple times and are used to protect those Starlink satellites and any payload for that matter while it is in the Earth's atmosphere. And now that it's out of it, it doesn't need it. So those will splash down about 672 kilometers or so downrange to the southeast.
And you saw a beautiful shot of the moon as those fairings separated. That was pretty cool.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. And even through the clouds, a little bit of the southeastern coast of the United States in frame there on the left. The other thing to keep an eye on, if you look on the bottom left, you see the speed is going down, but the altitude is still going up. So it hasn't reached the highest point yet, which is apogee. So at this point, it's still using momentum to go upward. You'll know it's hit apogee when that number stops and then starts going downward, and that's when you'll also see it start picking up speed again. Hence why there is an entry burn that they also perform, which is scheduled for about a minute and a half or so from now.
Hopefully that entry burn's a little bit longer than the one we saw for Crew 7 the other night.
We'll see. Again, it is it landed. That's what matters.
did. That's
But
right.
yeah, this one, according to SpaceX, is scheduled to be a, let's see, 23-second burn, a little longer than usual.
And is this something that they anticipate it being that long? But I would imagine that the rocket's onboard computers and the telemetry that it's experiencing are what determines how long that burn is for.
Oh, absolutely. If one engine's burning a little hot, meaning going a little more thrust than they expected, then you compensate elsewhere. So that's when you would, maybe shorten the entry burn by a little bit. So, or if, you don't have enough thrust, say on the second stage, then maybe you burn a little bit longer. So that's why sometimes they're off by a couple of seconds typically from the published times that SpaceX releases.
Looks like we got a minute or two before the burn begins. I did have a question from one of the viewers here, Daniel Weilert, who wants to know, is engine chilling required for the booster during entry and landing burns? And I think they do chill the engines before they light them up again, don't they?
Yes, the engines are chilled, same thing, preparing them for what they're about to experience. They will be ignited with the T-tab and then the fuel run through it, in this case for approximately 23 seconds for this burn. And then the landing itself should be about a 20-ish second burn.
I think we're seeing a little bit of that going on right now.
You can kind of see it orienting itself there. You see the cold gas thrusters at the base there helping to turn it a little bit ahead of that entry burn, which again should be about 10 seconds away.
Look out for that burn.
I love the moonlight reflecting on the grid fins there, even the outline of the atmosphere. This is just beautiful. Stand by. There we go.
We can't see that from the ground. That must look really cool right now.
If you're far south enough and it's clear skies along the horizon, sometimes you can actually see the entry burns. But yeah, that's why the booster gets sooty right there. You can see it even happening on the camera. Again, RP1, refined kerosene, carbon-based. Carbon creates soot, so that's how you get sooty boosters.
I think what's amazing about, the reason why this never gets old for us is just how different all these look, even though it's the same process here. Now, are we seeing plasma building up on those grid fins right now?
That's it re-entering. You can see it interacting with the atmosphere there. That's what's happening through those little holes in the giant titanium grid fins there. And again, I always like to point this out. Sometimes the landing happens before SECO or second engine cutoff. This is one where the landing will happen first, followed by second engine cutoff about 15 seconds after landing. So don't be surprised if it cuts away and then cuts back. But look at how in the bottom left, how quickly the speed is dropping in the altitude there.
Wow, it is really dropping.
Yep. And it will go from that speed to 0 in the matter of about 20 seconds or so. And we should see that starting in about 30 seconds.
All right. Like the video's having trouble communicating.
Hey, it's a good thing they're launching more Starlinks.
That's right. Because they do use Starlink on the drone ships to send back imagery.
Yes, they do. So yes, it's right now basically using the atmosphere itself to kind of slow itself down. You may see a little bit of the drone ship poking through there. The big thing again is
there it goes.
Watching the grid fins wiggle there. That's helping to steer it towards the drone ship.
All right, here's the drone ship view on the right. Wow. Another bullseye for SpaceX.
X marks the spot. And that is
Absolutely.
the 147th consecutive landing for SpaceX. And their 222nd booster landing overall.
Wow. It's a lot of money saved every time they can get one of those back, even with all the logistics involved with collecting it, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a shot of our beautiful celestial neighbor there, the moon. And an empty pad is always nice to see. And that pad won't be empty for long, will it?
No, it will not. That's DOS's favorite view. Shout out to DOS there. But next launch is scheduled currently, I believe, for Sunday. And I do want to mention we have confirmation of nominal orbit insertion. So the Starlink satellites are in their current parking orbit. Keep in mind they still have more to do. There will be one more engine firing for approximately, this is a long one. Ready? 1 second.
Wow.
Which is called SES-2 and then SECO-2 prior to the satellites deploying. About an hour and 5 minutes after their liftoff is when they'll finally deploy.
And we have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you for your support. Who wants to know what happens to the second stage after deployment. We talked about this on a stream the other night, that it's really not feasible to get these second stages back. So what do they do with the second stage?
No, they got rid of the bouncy castle idea, for those who remember. These are low enough when they drop off the satellites that they will deorbit as well. This is expected to deorbit and burn up around the southern coast of South Africa and into the Indian Ocean is where we should expect pieces to land.
And so, so this is something where we're, in the past, they just let the stuff float around up there forever. That's not how it works today. So you have to have at least a plan and execute that plan to try to prevent a lot of debris continuing to orbit the Earth. So it's
sometimes they do. There is an orbit that is specifically called a graveyard orbit, which is basically where parts of rockets go to die when you want to keep them out of the way of other satellites, but either don't have enough fuel or it's too high in altitude to have it make sense to burn it up in the atmosphere.
All right, I got a couple of other super chats here if you got a few minutes. Tim Simpson with a $5 New Zealand super chat wants to know if the sun and the moon position has a minor gravitation effect on flight. It certainly impacts tides, right? Could it impact the atmospheric density or thickness? I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I'll throw it to you, Sawyer, see if you can have any insight on moon position related to atmosphere.
It's not so much position. It's things like space weather is the main concern, and that's not even so much the atmospheric effect. Basically, the sun, big giant ball of gas, likes to shoot stuff out into space. Too much of it in a solar flare, and it can knock out entire GPS satellites in addition to scrambling signals down here on Earth and things like that. We have had launches where Starlinks have been damaged due to space weather. So that's more of the concern than the gravitational effect is the solar weather.
We have, I think, a pretty big solar storm on the way from what I was reading through one of my amateur radio listservs. So there might be some issues with that in the very near future here. So I want to thank a new member, Joe G., who became a Red Team member. Thank you very much. And Jim Cavett contributed one Red Team membership to another viewer. So good stuff there. So it looks like we've had a successful launch of the Starlink Express here. And it's always great to see another successful mission here. It's amazing how many missions there are. And, our shot there of the moon is so close, you can actually see its orbit there, it looks like. I don't think the camera's moving.
No, the camera's stationary. That's just how the... what was the old soap opera? As the World Turns.
Yes. And the moon is turning here. And it's quite a moon this evening, and we even caught a great glimpse of it through that second stage as well. So great stuff. Really, really cool. All right. So then we have about an hour before satellite deployment. I don't think we're going that long tonight, but I'm sure the SpaceX will, usually they tweet out something when they have a successful deployment, right?
And we'll also keep an eye out on our social media channels as well for that. And you can also keep an eye out on Space Coast Live for when these boosters come back and for when the drone ship, A Shortfall of Gravitas, goes out for this weekend's mission. You can see actually the entrance to the port right there, looking down at Jetty Park and towards the entrance. So keep an eye on Space Coast Live for all of that action happening, as well as the Transporter Erector 39A, which is currently vertical, that they're preparing to attach the basically the base of it for Falcon 9 before they roll it back into the horizontal integration facility and load her up with a Falcon 9 booster.
It's a busy week, too, because we have Crew 6 coming back also, right?
They're scheduled to come back this weekend as well. We'll have a full article on that on nasaspaceflight.com. I may know the author, so hopefully it's good.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is going to do it for our coverage tonight. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We had thousands watching this evening, which is great for just another Starlink launch, but they're never the same twice. So it's always good to tune in and check it out. It's always fun hanging out with everybody in here. And as always, a pleasure serving with you, Sawyer. And I know Max is probably getting his cameras put together there, so I want to thank him as well. And we were also supported tonight by Kevin, who was, I believe, running the stream. Who else was supporting us today, Sawyer? Was that it?
That's it. That's still a lot of people,
Still
and
a
there's
lot.
still great support. By the way, before we go, Max, how was this launch?
Thank you, Sawyer. It was beautiful as always. Of course, the thick, humid Florida air always helps help move the sound better through itself, and it was very, very, very punchy, and the VAB was squealing like a mother. Hopefully, the microphone picked it up. Unfortunately, so for all viewers who were interested, I was going for a lunar transit with one of my cameras from here at the Price site. But unfortunately, a big old thick cloud came through and ruined everything. Unfortunately, it's okay though. There's always next time. But overall, it was an absolutely beautiful launch. And of course, just after Miko, I heard a very large alligator bellowing off in the water to my left, which is per usual for these late night Starlinks. So
Cape security is in force. But yeah, I don't know if we really heard the squealing that much on this one. Maybe check your microphone position next time. I'm kidding. It's an inside joke. But but otherwise, yes. Sometimes the VAB does squeal. You'll have to, I guess, go back and watch it again and see.
Yeah, maybe we'll put some footage up a little bit later if we got a good squeal there. So, and the squeal is when the sound of the rocket just bounces off the side of the VAB. I heard that on the landing the other day, so that was really cool. So, always something new to experience there. And Max, great work tonight. We got some great imagery from the launch tonight. So. That is going to do it for this launch. And guess what? There's like always another launch around the corner. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. That notification bell is really helpful when it works to let you know that we are here. And I want to thank everyone for their super chats and memberships this evening too. All of that helps bring this wonderful coverage to you. And we've got the NASA Spaceflight store that you can find at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, where you can get all sorts of cool merchandise, including those metallic prints, T-shirts, you name it. All sorts of great stuff for the space fan in your life. And that is going to do it for this evening. Thank you all, and we'll catch you on the next one.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Say again, FD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. What do you think? Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?